Let me thank God for the King family, all you have given, all you have suffered, all you have survived, and all that you have stood steadfast through. And the King Center, the great work that Coretta Scott King began to keep alive the work not only of Dr. King, but the work of the entire movement. I accept this award not as an individual, but as one called to serve a movement that has tried to listen and follow Dr. King's last instructions to us. I am grateful. As Dr. King said it, for all of the devotees of the civil rights movement. And I honor him this evening, not as a Black leader, but as a prophetic leader, a human rights advocate who understood that we must come together in every age to address the social sicknesses of our time. Dr. King never minced any words. In his last speech in Memphis, he was with garbage workers. As he prepared for the Poor People's Campaign, he was standing right alongside the National Welfare Rights Women's Organization. Dr. King placed the movement in that last sermon in a world historical context, celebrating that he was allowed in his own time to help echo that age-old message of people who have said and were saying at that time across the world, from America to Africa, we simply want to be free. I received this award on behalf of all of those longing to be free today. Not just free from the ancient chains of slavery, but free from poverty, free from the lies of scarcity, the lies that we don't know how to fix these things, free from the weak moral narrative that is plaguing the land that we must change. Awards like this are a challenge to continue to do more, rooted in grand traditions, the grand traditions of love and truth and nonviolence and sacrifice. We are committing to go full all out in building the Poor People's Campaign national call for moral revival in this moment of our national sickness. And I don't like using those same words that Dr. King used in '68, but it is true. When we see political and physical insurrection, we have a form of national sickness. When we see assaults on the poor, even today in low wealth, more than 140 million people still in poverty. And since COVID, we've seen billionaires gain nearly $2 trillion in the first 20 months of COVID, and 8 million more poor and low wealth people suffer under poverty, who were the first to be forced to go to work, the first to get sick, the first to go to the hospitals, the first to fill up the ICU wards, the first to die, while we call them essential workers, but in policy denial after policy denial, we treat them like expendable. When we see the widespread assault on voting rights, not just assault on Black people, but an assault on voting rights and democracy, that if many of the current plans would have final say in 50 states, some 56 million people who used processes to vote in 2020 would not have those processes in 22. We have a sickness. When we see misinformation campaigns and billions spent to divide us, because remember, it was Dr. King in 1965 that reminded us that it was the threat of the free exercise of the ballot by the Negro and poor white masses that fostered the segregated society and voter suppression of the 19th century. And it is clear that today the changing demographics that make it possible for Black and white and brown and Asian and Native to come together and form new coalitions that could change not only the political power systems, but who controls the purse strings of this nation and who controls its public policy possibilities, we know and we continue to see that there's a lot of money being spent to divide us, to keep us from seeing the realization of the beloved community. And that is a form of sickness. But in this moment, we are committed to mobilizing the largest mass assembly of poor people and low-wage workers in this nation's history on June 18, 2022. We call it the Mass Poor People's Assembly Moral March on Washington and to the polls. I accept this award with a commitment to stand with all people, determined to change the moral narrative, determined to build power among poor and low wealth people who now represent 30% of the electorate and up to 45% of the electorate in battleground states, who represent over 140 million people, over 52% of our children and 43% of adults. On the one hand, those are shameful numbers, but on the other hand, it lets us know that the stones that the builders have rejected, as Dr. King prophesied to us, would one day have the power to be the chief cornerstones in building a new America. Dr. King saw this power base and he knew that it could reshape the economic architecture of the nation and build the beloved community. We have to give ourselves to this moment, is what he said. And we must remember what Coretta Scott King said after her husband was murdered. Violence is more than just someone being killed with a weapon. Violence is denying food to a child. Violence is blocking healthcare or affordable housing. Violence is denying the right to vote. Violence is even an apathetic attitude that refuses to address the many forms of systemic violence. She said this. She said that itself is also a form of violence. So to be committed to nonviolence is to be committed to action, movement, building, moral fusion, analysis, articulation, and action. And whenever we cease to challenge violence in all of its forms, we become accessories to the violence. But when we decide to challenge it using love and truth and justice, then we become the possibility of violence being eradicated. We cannot be accessories to violence by our silence or our refusal to act. The King family can't do that and never did. And my fellow recipients here tonight, we can't be silent. We cannot be on the side of violence through our apathy or inaction. None of us can if we really care about this country and this world. We must use our lives to stand and be lifelong advocates of social justice and nonviolent social change. We can never allow government or political deadlines to determine how long we are going to stand for what's right. Our deadline must always be victory, no matter how long it takes, no matter how long it takes. Dr. King that last night said, we must give ourselves to this movement, and nothing would be more tragic than for us to turn back at this point. And so I'm going to take this award back to the movement, back among the people who joined the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. And I'm going to tell them that this is a sign that more are coming and that we're going to keep linking up with everybody in this country, determined to move forward together and not one step back. Congratulations to all of the other awardees. I'm humbled to be in the midst, and I invite all of us to be a part of that great army of love and justice and truth, so that in our time, it will be written and said, we did not turn back. We did not stand down. We refused to accept any phony deadlines. The only deadline we honor when it comes to justice is victory for the least of these. God bless you.